What's going on? Appreciate you clicking on the video. I really do. So in this one, I got to talk about Game 3 of the NBA Finals because it was a very interesting game. It had the most thrilling finish of the three games so far in the finals. So I want to touch on a few things that I saw that were obviously pivotal to what happened last night. So we'll go ahead, get started with the stats. So looking at the stats right here, the Celtics shot a little bit better from the field. They shot 46%. They shot 37% from three, which if you remember last game, they went with 10 of 39, basically like 25%. This game, they stepped it up 37% from three, which was obviously a big part of why, well, I guess what transpired over the course of the game. I think the key stat that we need to look at, well, it's two. One, assists. Once again, the Celtics had more assists, 26-15. That shows the level of ball movement that Boston has, the level of, I would say, trust in the other players to make shots or just make plays off of the dribble and finding ways to get open through cuts, everything like that. Just ball movement. The Celtics, once again, better at it than Dallas is. Now, some of that for Dallas is still the fact that their other players aren't really stepping up in the way that they did during the Minnesota series. Now, yes, Minnesota had the number one defense, but the way the Celtics are defending them in terms of Dallas is just much different than Minnesota did. So this version of defense that Dallas is trying to go up against is creating way more issues for them than they're used to. I mean, once again, it was another game where Luka, Kyrie were able to, well, actually Kyrie, who we'll touch on a little bit, actually had a good game in this one. Luka was, this was probably his worst game so far of the finals, which I feel like was a big factor as well. But yeah, the Celtics get the 106-99 win. Now, looking at the final score, you wouldn't actually know that at one point the Celtics had a 21-point lead going into the fourth. Dallas kind of did what they normally do. They go on a crazy run, get it to a couple possessions, but could never really get over the hump and reclaim the lead. Because also in this game, to start off with, Dallas came out swinging from jump, which I kind of knew it was expected. That season on the line, basically, because they couldn't lose this one to go down 3-0. They came out with a lot of energy to start in the first quarter. Actually had like a 13-0 lead, I believe, or 10-0, something like that. But they had a early double-digit lead. The Celtics weathered that storm, much like what they kind of did in Game 2. So you had to figure it was a bit demoralizing for Dallas in the fact that they started off so hot, but went into the half only up one. Game 2 had a great first half, ended up being down by 3 at halftime. So they improved a little bit in terms of the halftime score, but it just didn't seem to match how the first half played out, that they actually were only up by 1 at halftime. So coming out third quarter, Celtics just go crazy. They start hitting a bunch of threes. They're breaking down Dallas's defense, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But yeah, they just ballooned the lead out, and it looked like they were going to coast. Like I said before, the Mavs were able to put a run together, but just could never reclaim the lead. So once again, ball movement, coming into the series, a lot of people wondered about the Celtics offense being too stagnant. Well, once again, Celtics had more assists. So that would let you know that the more stagnant offense is the Dallas offense. Now, some of that, like I said, is kind of out of necessity because Jason Kidd played 11 guys last night. Now, that's kind of wild to think that he would do that, but he was trying to find combinations around Luka and Kyrie that could get something done. Give them some type of help, just anything. He threw Tim Hardaway out there because everybody been clamoring, got to throw Tim Hardaway out there. Tim Hardaway scored as much points as you and I right now. None. So that's something that they're down 3-0, right? I guess Kidd probably does the same thing in Game 4, but we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. So first off, the play of the game right here, this Derek White 3, which I believe at this point the game was down to 3-point Celtics lead. Momentum had completely shifted back to Dallas. It almost seemed like there was an inevitable feeling that Dallas was going to take over, get the lead, steal this one, and we'd be sitting here talking about kind of a brand new series with Dallas being down 2-1 instead of 3-0, which they are. But on this play, Drew Holiday, I believe off of a pass from Tatum, who was on the wing, kicked it to Drew Holiday in the corner, who I believe he beat. Who did he beat off the dribble? Was it Luka? Might have been Luka off the dribble. No, PJ Washington, I think, closed out on him, and Drew Holiday went by him baseline, got into the lane, went up, did like a pass over his shoulder with his left hand, hit Derek White perfectly, in his shooting pocket. He went up, drained the 3, as Derek White has done several times this year. So that clearly, did it for them, right? It ballooned the lead back to 6. I mean, not balloon, but it created a little bit more separation. It allowed Boston to kind of take a deep breath and realize that they could hold on, which they did. So this was the play of the game for me. It was, in that moment, such a clutch shot for Derek White to make. But like I said, Derek White's done that all season, which is why there's reports like in the offseason, it's expected that the Celtics and Derek White will come to some extension, which for me, love to hear it. Would love to see Derek White in Boston for several years to come. But next up, once again from Boston, they hunted Luka and Kyrie when they're on offense. It allowed Tatum and Brown to have their best game together in this series, because games 1 and 2, Brown's played really well. Tatum played well, just not scoring the ball, so he did other things. In this game, Tatum had his best scoring game. Obviously, he scored 31. Brown had 30. So, like I said, it's the first time the two of them put together really good scoring games at the same time. And in a game 3, that's clutch. Tatum's shooting still, he shot like 44% from the field. I mean, it's better than what he'd been doing in games 1 and 2, but you still know that Tatum could do a little bit better. But he was still able to kind of get into the lane, whether it was assisting, his fellow teammates, or like the hockey assist where he kicks it out to somebody who then kicks it to somebody else. I feel like Tatum was still pretty effective in that way. He didn't have the assist and rebound numbers like game 2, but I felt like he was still effective. Jaylen Brown, once again, as we've kind of seen, he's about this life. Now, he did struggle actually in the first half. He, I believe, only had like 8 points or so going into halftime, but the second half, it was almost like, Tatum got them through the initial wave of Dallas scoring, got them to halftime, like I said, down 1. And then the second half, Jaylen Brown kind of took over and became that guy who beat his man off the dribble, knocked down some threes, was kind of just doing everything, put a lot of pressure on Luka, which I'll get to a little bit later. So yeah, that part hasn't changed for Dallas, or actually for Boston. They're still seeking those two out. And in this game, what we saw, I guess the counter to what Boston's been doing, Jason Kidd employed a lot more zone, which in some cases meant that with Luka and Kyrie up top, he was literally sending Gafford, Lively, and for a couple of possessions, Hardaway Jr. just standing basically in the paint, front of the rim, because it was kind of known Tatum, Brown, White, whoever, Drew Holiday was going to get by Luka or Kyrie, and one of those guys was going to be there to step up. Now, it did lead to some undisciplined play in terms of Dallas's defense, because even when they're in that zone, the Celtics were finding wide open guys because other guys who were like not on the ball in terms of pressure were like falling asleep in their zone and just allowing guys behind them or whatever. So, yeah, kind of more of the same as we've seen so far. Dallas struggling defensively against Boston, with only their real shot of winning a game almost seemingly being Boston just missing a bunch of shots. And I guess Boston would have to kind of let up defensively. I don't know. But let's keep moving here. So like I said, Kyrie actually had a very good Kyrie Irving game. Got to give him credit. In a game that they needed, he was there. Now, I feel like for some people, maybe they should have relied on Kyrie a bit more, because Kyrie had 35, Luka had 27. But it definitely seemed like Kyrie was more comfortable, right? No Boston crowd hounding him. The Dallas crowd was there for him, obviously. He played well. He hit tough shots. He got into the lane. He did his thing. So it was almost like a role reversal in terms of, Kyrie went off. They made it a bit tougher on Luka. Whereas the first two games was like Luka goes off, but they make it tougher on Kyrie. So once again, both guys haven't really put together a really effective 4 quarters in the same game. That's obviously why they find themselves down 3-0. So back to Luka, because this has kind of been the bigger talking point of the day. Talk about officiating. And if you remember, I had the stats up there. There was actually more fouls called on the Celtics than the Mavs, but we're talking officiating. The problem with that for me is that Luka allowed the frustration of the Celtics defense to completely take him off his game, to the point that every trip down, if he didn't make a shot, score, he was complaining about something. Some plays, he was behind the play once the Celtics were in transition because he was complaining. Or if he, went down trying to get a call, he'd stay down while the Celtics were going in transition. He would be trailing the play. He would get in the refs' faces, all this kind of stuff. Once again, to talk about officiating, if you want to be real, Luka probably should add like 3-4 technicals. But the refs allowed him because of the motion of the game, with it being Dallas is fighting for their lives right now in the finals. So it seemed like the officials allowed Luka to complain a lot. So we're going to talk about officiating. That's part of the officiating, right? But once again, when you're looking at the officiating didn't have Dallas down 21. I feel like we all can agree with that. That was their poorest defense that failed yet again in this series, that had them down 21. It wasn't officiating in terms of against them that allowed them to make that grand comeback. Well, I guess almost comeback. They just made it closer. Officiating wasn't a problem then, but Luka fouls out. Now officiating is the problem. Now, remember, you get 6 fouls to foul out. Luka had about 9 or 10 fouls to get to the 6, and that's not counting some he wasn't even called for. Like the loose ball that Jaylen Brown was clearly going to get to, Luka basically just shoulder tackles him, no call. I guess because Tatum ended up gaining possession, but let's be real, that was clearly a foul. Once again, officiating. Luka had about 2 or 3 foul calls, which were purely frustration. So that accounts to why the foul on Jaylen Brown with like 4:15 to go in the game was his 6th foul. One was he got into the lane for certain periods of the game, like he looked like he didn't have any lift on his shot once he got into the lane. So he left the shot short. Horford gets the rebound, gives it to Derek White, and out of frustration, Luka just fouls him. You know how I know it was out of frustration? Because Luka fouls him, points to the ref, and goes, "Yeah, I fouled him." So he's giving fouls away, ends up fouling out, but we're going to talk about officiating. I don't know. You tell me. He had another one. Frustrated once again. Pritchard's bringing the ball up, gets across half court. Luka decides, I'm going to go all out on the ball defense, which for Luka meant get up on him body wise, reach, grab, try to make something happen. Fouls Pritchard, does the same thing, points to the ref and goes, "Yeah, I fouled him." So that's at least 2 frustration fouls that he wasted, leading to the fact of him picking up a 6th foul. So I get it. Mavs fans are going to point to officiating because I guess they have to cope with some reason for Dallas to be down 3-0 when going into the series. All we heard about was, well, Celtics haven't seen a team like Dallas. Dallas is coming out of the much tougher West. They've been beaten 3 straight, on the verge of a sweep, and it's like everybody's trying to wrap their head around how this is happening. Do you know how it's happening? The Celtics are just a really good team. They just are. It's not the Celtics' fault that media people wanted to rain on their season because it was, well, the East wasn't that good. So how good of a team could they really be? I don't know. They had to beat Western Conference teams this season as well. Not like they just played the East and then magically this is the first time they're seeing a Western Conference team. Doesn't work that way in the NBA. So that's 1. 2, they wanted to doubt these 2 whether or not they could win, which oddly enough, people were picking Dallas because they felt like these 2 can't get it done. Although the counter argument would be, would have Luka and Kyrie won together? But whatever. You make predictions. In this case, you have a 50-50 chance. You're either going to be right or wrong, right? So for whatever reason, a lot of people, well, not a lot. I mean, I don't know how many people, but there were several people who were picking Dallas in the NBA media. Thirdly, they look at, I mean, we're kind of seeing almost a piggyback off of 2, a lot of narratives created about these 2 as to whether or not they're a top pair in this league. Do they like each other? Remember that 2-3 day stretch where we had analysts actually breaking down Jason Tatum's body language when Jaylen Brown won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. That was an actual story. So I get it. A lot of people thought Dallas was gonna come in, make it tough on the Celtics, and possibly win a title. Now, you move a couple of weeks, they're down 3-0, possibly being swept. So, am I going to call this series over? Yeah, because no teams come back from 3-0. Even though I've seen some people like, well, if any team's going to give up a 3-0 lead, these Celtics. I don't know what in this series has shown that that's going to happen. But for Dallas, look, you lose games 1 and 2. That's fine. You're the road team. It's okay. You had a game last night where after the start you had, it seemed like you had all the emotion and everything behind you. You should have capitalized on that, but you let it slip. I get it. Game 3 was about ambition. Like if you wanted to actually try to win a title, you had to win game 3. Well, that's flown by. Game 4 now is about pride. Do you want to have the Celtics celebrate their 18th title as an organization on your floor, or do you want to, delay the parade, force a game 5, get on a jet, go back up to Boston, and face that hostile crowd, which games 1 and 2, I know Derek Lively talked about the crowd and how they weren't all that loud, or there was about, 55% of that game last night, at least on TV. I wasn't there. That Dallas crowd wasn't that great either. I'm only saying either because to go with Derek Lively's point. I know the Boston crowd, come on. Like, let's be real. So if you thought it was bad for 1 and 2, go for a game 5, down 3-1, with that crowd understanding that they're 48 minutes away from celebrating on their home floor. You tell me how that goes for you. Especially the fact that the PJ Washingtons, Gafford, Lively's, Hardaways, Klebers, Exums, these guys are not performing. So if you want to attempt it, knock yourself out. Now, there is video going around of the Mavs not showing up for the media portion of practice today. Is that a big deal? Not really. I mean, if you want to read into it, is it a team that's quit and just taking a day off? I don't know. Or the fact that there aren't 2 days in between games 3 and 4, so they're using today as an off day to recover for game 4 on Friday. Maybe. So, like I said in the title, the Celtics are now a game away from their 18th organizational championship. First championship for this duo. I probably should have put something up here for Joe Mazzulla because Joe Mazzulla is actually getting credit now. What world are we living in, right? Most times nobody wants to talk about Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla, once again, coached well. Also, before I get out of here, shout out to Xavier Tillman. That, the guy that they got trade deadline from Memphis, played a little bit in the regular season, hasn't played much in the playoffs, but with no Porzingis, Joe, which I did do a TikTok where I said, don't be surprised if Xavier Tillman gets minutes. I know some people thought Luke Cornett, but it was Tillman. Tillman played great in the time that he had. I want to give him his just due here. He had 4 rebounds, which was a lot of tough rebounds. He had a couple of blocks. He played how many minutes? 11 minutes. He gave him 11 minutes of good energy. He was mobile defensively because we know that he can move for a big man. And he knocked down a corner 3, which I think he was having a pretty poor shooting season while he was in Memphis. I think he struggled a bit shooting the 3 with Boston while he was there. I mean, when he first came over. But there was a play where I think Jaylen Brown got into the lane, Tillman was open in the corner, wide open in the corner. Talking about Dallas's defense. Yeah. Kicked it to him, confidently rose up, drained it. The bench went crazy because I remember Tatum was going crazy on the bench. So I think it was Brown who had the assist on that one. And that just showed you the contrast between the two teams. Kid is throwing out 11 guys hoping for somebody to produce. Joe Mazzulla picks a guy who hasn't played in these finals yet, and he gave you 11 great minutes. Sam Hauser played, I think, 14 minutes. He gave you 14 productive minutes, hit 3 threes. His three-point shot had been a bit of a concern. Knocked down 3 confidently. So the Celtics went 8 deep, and I mean, Pritchard didn't score, but Pritchard, I feel like, played decent minutes. And that's the difference between these two teams. And these are the issues that were always there. It's just they just neglected it because of these guys. Clearly, they just didn't want them to win, right? I feel like that's what's come down to. Because if they don't win, they can continue to push how these two can't win together. They can't play together. You know, Brad Stevens needs to break them up. That's what was coming down the line if they did not get it done. I feel like they knew that, and that's why they're playing the way that they are. Where offensively, they can struggle, but defensively, they're given all effort and execution on that end, which is frustrating Dallas. So before I gotta get out of here, obviously I say Al Horford is 1 win away from getting a ring. Shout out to Al Horford. Once again, should have put an image here of Al Horford, but I didn't. So that's on me. But shout out to that guy who has stepped up as well as a leader on this team. Which I mean, that's another thing about how Jaylen Brown's become the leader. That's his personality. And this all lets you know kind of when Marcus Smart was traded, why I didn't freak out about the move. Because moving Marcus Smart out, who was just the biggest voice because of his personality, allowed these two to develop as leaders. Brown's more of a vocal leader than Tatum is, I feel like, with Tatum through like sacrifice in terms of his playmaking. He's been a leader out on the court. So that's all I got for you. Appreciate you tuning in. Obviously, Game 4 is Friday night at 8:30, I believe. So by the time we hit about 11:30, 11:30 or so, Friday night, the Celtics could be your 2024 NBA champions. Or Dallas pulls out Game 4, and now we're waiting around till Monday to see what happens in Game 5. So obviously, let me know in the comments, how do you feel this series? Do you think Dallas is done? Are they cooked, goosed, whatever you want to say? Let me know. All right. I'll catch you later. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe. God bless. And I'll see you in the next video. All right. Bye.